Well, alrighty, we are in our Sample Rock Castle Construction Company here in our QuickBooks Desktop program. And before we actually get started on any of the items that we're going to be working with the memorized transaction list, I want to show you how to access it. And the best way to do that is go up here to lists under the menu, and then you're going to scroll down to the next to the last item, which is the memorized transaction list. Click on that to open that up. And as you can see, our memorized transaction list does not contain too many items right now. It has a couple of general journal entries and a check. But we'll talk about those in just a little bit. One of the things that the memorized transaction list will help you do is to automate certain entries into your QuickBooks file. Say you have a recurring rent check that you need to set up to go in monthly, or you have a recurring payment into a loan that you want to set up that you want to pay monthly, or if you have an annual fee that you want to set up to pay annually. Those type of things lend themselves really well to using the memorized transaction feature. You can also set up complex invoices and bills so that all you have to do is to set those up initially and then just reuse them. Change the customer name, maybe add a few additional details, maybe change some pricing, and then that saves you lots and lots of time. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of this real quick. And to create a memorized transaction, you need to actually start with a transaction either already created, or you can create one of your own. Let's go ahead and start by creating one of our own. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create an invoice for one of the new customers that we created in a previous exercise. His name is Green. His name is Green Robert. And this is going to go towards the living room job. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to leave the date of this 12/15/2020. And we're going to set up this item as a door. Actually going to find the group. We're going to add this, but we want to add the group first. So we're going to do the door set, which contains our standard doorknobs and exterior wood doors and exterior door and hardwood set. And right now the quantities are set at 1, and you can change those for however many doors he might need. So, and then we're going to add to this the door frame. And when we do that, you'll see what happens. Let me scroll down a bit. You'll see a little item here that, since this is an inventory part, you can click on that so you can see the quantity on hand and then how many reserved for assemblies, which we haven't talked about yet. So basically the number of quantities we have available for this is 6. So we can go ahead and close this out by clicking on the close button here. Now that we know that we have 6 available, he only wants 3 because he's going to have 3 doors. Same thing with this. We can do the same thing with that. So there's plenty of those. There's 16 of those available. So we'll go ahead and type a 3 there. Notice how the price changes when we do all that. And same thing with the standard doorknobs here. And we have plenty of those. So click on close again and type 3. So we've got 3 of each of those. And then we need to put in the rate for the door frame. And we're going to say that the door frame for the purpose of this exercise is only like $55. I don't know what it really is, but just for the purpose of this exercise, that was the price. And the reason why they didn't have a rate assigned for that, like we talked about in one of the earlier exercises when we set up the items list, is that those items, they charge different amounts depending on how much was in the inventory. So at any rate, we have our invoice ready. It calculates the tax for us, and we can change the tax entity, but we're going to accept the defaults here and everything. And so now we show that our balance due, and before we do anything else, we're going to click on this button up here. It's called the Memorize button. You can either do that up here, or you can go down to Edit and Memorize Invoice. But it's just easier to go ahead and memorize it from the invoice itself. Then we're going to call this, it defaults to living room because that's the job name, but we're going to change this to door set and frame order. And there's 3 ways you can set this up. You can add this to your reminders list, which means it'll appear in your reminders, which is this little thing up here for you to enter that. You can set it up for daily, weekly, every 4 weeks, all these options you have available. You can also set it up to do not remind me, and it will automatically be on the list for you to go back and add it the next time. So if you don't want it recurring, that's what you want to do. And then the last thing is if you want to automate this, say like if you want it to be entered daily, weekly, every 2 weeks, that kind of thing, you would set that up. We don't want this to be a recurring thing. We just want this to be on the list for the next time. If we have a similar order, which we will probably have similar orders for other customers for the same type of thing. So we're going to choose do not remind me. And then we're going to go ahead and click on OK. And then you will, when you go back to the memorized transaction list, you'll see it on there. And let's do that real quick so you can see the memorized transaction list, and the item is on there now. And it appears, most of these appear in alphabetical order. You can also sort by type too by clicking on the heading, and otherwise it'll sort by transaction name. So I'm going to close that back out because we still haven't saved the invoice yet. We still got to save the invoice for this particular customer. So we're going to go ahead and save and close that. And it says one or more items have not been assigned a class. So you've got to remember to either assign a class or save anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and save anyway. Of course, ordinarily you would use classes, but we haven't gotten into that. So I'm not going to worry about that. So we've saved that invoice, and it is also saved to our memorized transaction list so that we can go back later and access it if we need to. And let me show you what you would do is you would go back to your memorized transaction list. You would double click on this invoice to pull it up, and it has all the same information, but the numbers are consecutive. So we start with a brand new invoice with the same quantities. All you would need to do is, in this instance, you would change the name of the person or the customer and the job. And we're going to exclude all this. And then you would just go in and change the quantities if you needed to and all that. And then you would save and close. You don't have to do anything else. It's already memorized in there on the list. So you're just pulling that up so you don't have to redo this every time you have the same thing. I'm not going to save this time. I'm just going to go ahead and just click on the X to get out of this. But that's what you would do. Once you set it up, then you have it in there. So let's go ahead and do a few of these from transactions that have already been created. The next thing I want to do is I want to go in and set up a recurring check to a vendor. So I'm going to open up the vendor center. And I'm going to go ahead and click on any of these, and then I'm going to go ahead and type a C, and that'll jump us down to the list. So we want to choose the city of Bayshore. And you can see that there is a check in here that is dated 11/19/2020. And let's double click on that so we can see what that check is all about. Okay, so it's a job expense, permits, and licenses. What it appears is that Rock Castle Construction pays $225 every year for permits and licenses. And this is true for most businesses. They may have to get business licenses and permits, and they're paid on an annual basis. So we're going to memorize this check so that way when the time comes for the following year, it'll go ahead and enter this automatically. So we're going to go ahead and click on the Memorize button up here. And we're going to put City of Bayshore license renew. And you've got to watch out with your name because you only have so many characters that you can input this in. So again, we have the three choices. We're not going to use the do not remind me because we want to automate this. So if you do add to my reminders list, all it's going to do is add it to this list up here, and it's not going to enter the transaction for you. You'll have more control over it. You can do it yourself. And then you would set the next date. So we can pull this down a little bit and see that our next date is going to be, we're doing it in 2021. We can just go ahead and skip ahead. And then go back to 11/19/2021 for that. But we want this to be automated. So we're going to click here, and this is like setting up a bill pay, except for you're just setting it up to remind you to put it in. This is like an ACH possibly that's going to come out of your checking or something like that. So we have it how often annually, next date is this, and then you can, if this is something that's ongoing that you'll have to do on a continuous basis, you wouldn't put anything here. And then you can also put down days in advance to enter. So that way, if you wanted to choose 5-10 days in advance, I'm going to go ahead and select 5 days because we're going to enter this in 5 days early with this date. Go ahead and click on OK. And now that's on the list. Now we've done nothing with this check, and I want to caution you, just make sure you don't do anything with this. You don't want to change anything on this check or anything like that. So we're going to click on the X here to get out of that. And we're going to open up our memorized transaction list again so you can see what we've done. And it adds it again to the top of the list. And I'm going to go ahead and sort by type because you'll see why in just a few minutes. So we've got our new check, and you can see that we have the amount, and then we have it set up annually, and it's set to auto enter on this date. And then as you can see, we have a similar entry for a general journal entry for depreciation entry that goes in monthly for that. And just so if you needed to, just real quick, I'm going to right click on that so we can edit this. We're not really going to edit it, but I wanted to show you that you can actually edit this if you wanted to. If you see that you have additional time that you need to tack onto that, right now we have 1 month remaining. So I'm going to go ahead and add a 3 to the end of that. So that means that same amount is going to recur. So all you have to do is click OK, and then you go back to the list, and that updates in there. You don't see it on there unless you add the column, which we're not going to worry about that right now. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and do a bill. So we're going to go under vendors again. And we want to look up Hopkins Construction. Okay, and so we bill Hopkins Construction monthly for equipment rental. And I'm going to go ahead and double click on the bill so you can see the bill. And this bill's already been paid. And so what we want to do is we want to set up a recurring bill so that we can remember to enter this bill payment, and this is one that we do by ACH. So we want to memorize this as well. Remember, you can click here or you can go under Edit and Memorize Bill. Let's just go ahead and do it under Edit and Memorize Bill like that. And again, we want to make sure, and that's basically what it's going to be for, is equipment rental. So let's see if I can even squeeze that in there. And it's getting to the point where you can't. So you may have to edit the words so you can get all that to fit. Hopkins Construction Equipment Rentals. And so we do want to automate this transaction entry. And we're going to do it monthly. And the next due date would be on January 1st 2021, and days in advance to enter. Let's go ahead and do 5 for that as well. And let's say that we have a contract through the end of 2021. So we're going to count, including this January one, we're going to do 12 number remaining. So we're going to click on OK. And again, we don't want to mess with this. It's already been reconciled. It shows that it's been paid. So we're going to use the X to exit out of this. And we're going to go back to our list, memorize transaction list. And now you can see that that's already on there, Hopkins Construction Equipment. And it put that down on the bottom. And I'm going to resort it so we can have everything grouped. And it generally does it by alphabet with some exceptions. So anyway, we're going to leave it with the Hopkins Construction Equipment Rentals on top. And then I want to do one final one, and it's going to be a bank transfer. So let me exit out of this, and then we'll work with groupings, okay? All right, so transfers are just lateral movements of money from one account to the other. So you go under banking, transfer funds, and what we want to do first is we want to set up a $500 transfer from checking to savings. That's going to go in $500 that's going to be done on a monthly basis. And down here in the memo, we can just type monthly transfer of funds to savings starting in December 2020. All right. And if we wanted to put a class on that, we don't have to worry about that. I guess I'll just I'll mark it as overhead at this point. But you want to put the amount in there is $500. And let's say that we have yet to enter this transaction in here. So we will do that. Before we do that, we want to go over here to the edit, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to do this is through the edit menu and then memorize transfer that way. So in doing that, we have to type the name in here. We can do transfer to savings. And we want to automate this transfer. Like I said, if you just add it to the reminders list, you can put that down, but you will end up having to do it yourself. It'll show up on this list to enter, and you have to do it yourself. So we're going to set our next date for a month out. And we're going to automate this. Now we want to put this 5 days. I mean, it can be whatever day. And we're going to leave this open-ended because we hope to be able to do that every time. So we're going to go ahead and click on OK on that. And now that we've done that, we can go ahead and save and close this transaction. And you get this warning, just ignore it. And so we've done our transfer. If you go to view balances, you can go to the checking account and you can see that that transfer's been done. Which is this transaction right here. And I'm also going to bring up the memorized transaction list, and you can see that the transfer shows up on here, that it's automatically set up, and the next date is 1/15/2021, where that will go into effect. So I'm going to go ahead and filter this list again, or sort by type, because now what I want to do is I want to use groupings. Now, let me tell you about groupings. Groupings override individual settings in the memorized transaction list. So if you wanted to set up for your monthly recurring depreciation entry and your overhead into a group, first of all, you've got to create the group. So we're going to go under here to this list arrow, and we're going to click on New Group. And that opens up the group window. And say we wanted to add to the reminders list and not have QuickBooks enter this in, but we want to be reminded monthly. And the next date for that will be a month from now. So we're going to click OK on that. So we've got the group. Yes, the name cannot be blank. So we have to remember that. Let me put in here general journal entries. Month, because you don't have much room. I might even be able to put it all in there. Yes, I was able to. So that's good. All right, so general journal entries a month. That's our group. And as you can see, the group doesn't have anything associated with it yet. But we can do that with each of these. So we're going to put both of these within this group. We're going to right click or click with our right mouse button, and we're going to do edit memorize transaction. And now we have the option to add the group, which we didn't have before because we didn't have any groups. So now we choose the group name. That's the only group we've got, so we go OK. And so now that we've got this group set up with this parameter, it's going to remind us on this list that that's when we need to put that in. Let's go ahead and add that other general journal entry to that same group. We're going to right click on it. We're going to get into edit memorize transaction, click on the add to group, go ahead and find the group. It's the only one we got. Click on OK. And so now you can see, let me click away so you can see, are all of the groups that if you have several, and this is very helpful if you have several things that you're trying to do and you want to be able to go quickly to the area, because if the list gets kind of long, then the groups kind of help you find things. And again, you can actually sort by transaction name. So that way everything is in alphabetical order here by transaction name, and then the groups would be in order by the first letter of the name of the group. So that works out really well, and hopefully you can see how a lot of this will be used. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up this reminder. There we go. And it talks about upcoming things that you've got to do. So any of these that you need to do, and all those should be in there. And some of these other things that are too far out, you can't really see them, and then you can actually adjust some of the dates. Where in the company preferences, you can see the reminders. And right now, we're just not close enough to see some of those. But that's where you would access that list if you wanted to. But if you get close to any of the reminders of these other dates that we have here, then you'll see it appear on those lists, and also when you open up the file. So anyway, I hope this has helped you to see the power of doing the memorized transactions. So hopefully this whole section will have been of help to you, and I look forward to seeing you again for the next lesson. Take care.